Hi, my name is Ann Elliott. I'm the creator and founder of HomeschoolingTorah.com. I hope you'll get a cool drink, pull up a chair. Welcome to my home. This is day 3 of the 2022 Homeschool Family Conference, and today we're going to be talking about teaching time management. Teaching time management, what? Well, this conference is all about getting back to basics. And honestly, if we don't have a good handle on our time and we haven't taught our kids about time, then it's going to be really difficult to apply hardly any of the things we're learning this week. So I wanted to talk about time management, but I wanted to call it teaching time management because, Mom, you are not only responsible for your time, but you want to teach your children the skill of being able to manage their time. And it will pay off for you in the future. Maybe not this year, maybe not in 3 or 4 years, but by the time your children are getting into their teenage years, you're going to see a lot of benefits to your entire family and having that peaceful home that you're going for. So if everybody can figure out how to stay on schedule. And the Elliots are not perfect at this, just giving you that disclaimer right here. This is something that we're all in a work of progress on. But here are some of the things that I've learned, some of the scripture that I'm trying to work on and get into my heart, and just some tips and helpful ideas. So yes, definitely grab that pen. We're going to start with our Bible though. We're going to be looking in our Bible at Genesis chapter 1 at the very beginning, back to basics, right? Our Creator made the world and everything in it, and He talks about time management in this chapter. Let's look at verse 3, okay? Well, maybe, remember, in the beginning, Elohim created the heavens and the earth, but let's go down to verse 3. And Elohim said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And Elohim saw the light, that it was good, and Elohim divided the light from the darkness, and Elohim called the light day, and the darkness He called night. So the evening and the morning were the first day. Now, the confusion of that verse is that He's calling 2 different things a day. 24 hours, basically, it's how long it took for the sun to go up and through the day and the night. Now, the sun wasn't created yet, so it's just that 24 hours here. And He had light and He had day. And I don't know the source of that light, except we know that Elohim Himself is light. And I don't know how He made the night dark, except that He said that He did, and that He divided the 2. And He basically is, all He's doing is defining time right here. That there is daytime and nighttime, and the 2 parts make a day. So we know that. We use that in our language now. So it's interesting that one of the very first things that Elohim created was time. And that it was a 24-hour time segment. We're going to learn if you go down to the 4th day, okay? Because everything stays the same right here. The time periods are the same. So we know this is 24 hours. Let's see, in verse 14, I'm going to read 14 through 19. It says, Elohim said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the heavens to divide the day from the night." So, what did He use to tell time? The very first purpose of a light was to tell time, right? He used the sun to help divide the day from the night. And that was not it. He said, "Let them be for signs and seasons." That word is moedim in Hebrew. And the word moedim is a season, an appointment, a thing that comes round and round time after time, sort of like your doctor appointments or your vet appointments. Or biblical holidays, right? "And let them be for days and years, and let them be for lights in the firmament of the heavens to give light on the earth," and it was so. So we have here, we're going to have everything that makes the seasons and the appointments that come back year after year, which are our biblical feasts that are listed in Leviticus chapter 23. But it also is for days and years. Some of the things listed as biblical feasts are even months. So the months are dependent upon one of those lights that's in the sky, which is the moon. The stars help us know the seasons, because year by year the seasons come around, and the constellations definitely help us know where we're at. And they can be used for navigation. They can be used for sailors when they're, especially back in times before we had our modern navigational tools. You would use the sun, the moon, the stars as your pivot points, so you would know where you are. And that's one of the things I want you to know about time. Time helps you orient yourself as to where you are, and it helps give you purpose and direction to your day. And for our children, time helps them feel settled and knowing what day it is. So here at our house, as we move through the week, not even every day is the same. For instance, the first day of the week after Sabbath has happened is a very different feel to it than the sixth day of the week, where we're doing a lot of extra cooking and cleaning and preparing for the Sabbath. The Sabbath has an entirely different feel than all the other days. But no matter what, our counting of those days, and the counting happens as the sun rises and the sun sets, as we count those days through the week, it helps us orient ourselves, and it forms the basis of our to-do list. Like what I do on a Monday is entirely different than what I do on a Tuesday. And part of that is because on Tuesday we go grocery shopping and we run errands and go to different appointments. And what we do on a Tuesday, like I said, is different than a Wednesday. Wednesday, we often have a date night or go out with friends in the evening. A Thursday is very much a stay-at-home day. Friday is very much prep for the Sabbath. And I'm naming them according to the Gregorian names, which is not what the Bible does. The Bible just says day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5. So, as we go through our life, though, note that time is what dictates how we live. It dictates how everything happens in our life. It's incredible if you think about it. And all of this happened when he created the sun, the moon, and the stars. There's a really cool quote by a lady, and I don't know anything about her. Her name is Annie Dillard, but I like her quote. She says, "How we live our days is how we live our lives." So what Yehovah did that first week of time, what he did each of those days dictated how everything on our entire planet and universe operates, which is just amazing if you think about it. So time is incredibly important. I'm going to go over to Psalm 104. Psalm 104, and I'm not going to read the whole thing, although, man, I'd love to. We'd probably be here all day because I'd sit here and talk about all of it. It's a massive part of Psalm 104 in our Science Year 3 curriculum at Homeschooling Torah, because there's just so much science in this chapter. It's just amazing. But I'm going to read parts of it, and I hope you'll take some time, like jot yourself a note right now. Oh, take time. Did you see how I said that? Anyway, take some time to read Psalm 104, maybe this coming Sabbath day, and really meditate on all of the things it has. It's a really rich chapter. Verses 19 through 23, it says, He, which means Elohim or Yehovah, He appointed the moon for seasons. The sun knows it's going down. You make darkness, and it is night, in which all the beasts of the forest creep about. The young lions roar after their prey and seek their food from God. And when the sun rises, they gather together and lie down in their dens. Man goes out to his work and to his labor until the evening. So it describes this cyclical event that happens round the clock, day after day after day. The moon is appointed so that we would know what season of the year it is. And that's because the word moon itself is what we derive our word month from. Which moon is it of the year? And that tells us how to count the time. So when the sliver of a new moon is seen in the western sky, that is day 1. And remember, in Genesis chapter 1, the day starts at evening, which is at sunset or around that time. And so we see the moon at that time, and we count day 1. Day 1 of the month, not day 1 of the week. And it continues on, and from that we know, well, okay, it's the 14th evening, time for Passover if it's the first month of the year. And it's the 15th, now we're going to have the first day of unleavened bread, and we're going to count through, and all of the feasts are counted, except for Shavuot is a slightly different way, but it's still counted, and we use the sun, the moon, and the stars to figure out when these feasts are and when we're supposed to rest on Sabbath. And all of this is so dependent on His creation and definitely on Him. But anyway, the moon appoints the seasons, and the sun knows it's going down. So that's when the day starts, is when the sun is going down. We have a fresh, clean slate, and He starts us with sleep, which is pretty cool. He talks about the darkness in the night and how all the animals come out and they start looking for their food. So they have a rhythm that He created them to have, and they pass it down from one animal to the next, and it never changes. Over thousands of years, it's always been this way. And they go out looking for their their food at night. And as the sun starts to come up in the morning, they yawn, they gather together in their dens, and they go to sleep. And at that time, it says in verse 23 that man goes out to his work and to his labor. And so all day long, just like the animals were working all night, the man is out and he's working the fields and he's doing all of the things that Yah created him to do until the evening comes and he comes home. The sun is starting to set in the west and he comes home to his family. In fact, the very word for home is about him coming home back to his family at night and resting there together as a family unit. And it just continues to repeat over and over and over again. It's just utterly cool. In the same way, he did all of these things. I love verses 14 through 18 about how he made the cattle and the vegetation for our food, and the wine and the oil and the bread. Oh my goodness, all of these wonderful things that he created for our sustenance. And I guess the point is that the Father runs his world on a clock, and it's a never-ending clock. And the cycles repeat over and over and over again. And if we can get our lives into a rhythm that repeats just like that, weekly, daily, monthly, yearly, our whole bodies will settle down. The science behind this is amazing. I'm not going to go into it in this video. I'm going to post a link below. And if you really like to dig into the amazing science, and in that article that I wrote, there are even more footnotes that you can just start following and seeing where this goes, or take some of the words that I list in that article and you can Google them and be just utterly fascinated at the Creator who made us to be on a rhythm. So I would like to take you over though to Ecclesiastes Chapter 3. Just as man goes out to his work, there is a time for each of the different kinds of work that we do, or a time for resting as well. Ecclesiastes 3 is famous. I know you've heard of it. It says, "To everything there is a season and a time for every purpose under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to pluck what is planted, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to break down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to gain and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to throw away." Talk about decluttering. "A time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time of war and a time of peace." And I mean, it's just a very poetic way of saying everything in our lives has a good time for it and a time in which it is not appropriate. Really, there are things that we do in our day that all human beings just are better at doing at those certain times. And I know we like to say, I'm a night person, I'm a morning person, and I do think there is some truth to that, but really, if everything were done optimally, the way he created us, we would all be like that man who rises in the morning at sunrise as the animals are going to sleep. He's rising to go out to his work. And we would all be returning back to our homes in the evening. Now, I'm not saying you have to go out and change your schedule around if you're working second or third shift. I'm just saying that this is the optimal way he created our world to be. And obviously, there are things in our world that need round-the-clock supervision, and so we're thankful for people who do that. But I guess my point is there is an appropriate time for everything, and there is an inappropriate time for everything. And when something is done in the right season, it just is better. And so since we're going back to basics, I wanted to point that out. I also want to go to Ecclesiastes 5:18, and it says, "Here is what I have seen," Solomon's talking. "It is good and fitting for one to eat and drink, and to enjoy the good of all his labor, in which he toils under the sun all the days of his life, which God gives him, for it is his heritage." The days of your life that God has given you are your heritage. That's your inheritance. And the work that you do in this time is your inheritance. It's your heritage. It's your God-given right. And we don't want to be like the prodigal son and squander the gift that he has given. You can insert the word gift as inheritance. God gave you time and the ability to work. Don't squander it because it is limited. Let's go over to chapter 9, verses 7 through 10. It says, "Go and eat your bread with joy, and drink your wine with a merry heart, for God has already accepted your works. Let your garments always be white, and let your head lack no oil. Live joyfully with the wife whom you love all the days of your vain life which he has given you under the sun, all your days of vanity. For that is your portion in life and in the labor which you perform under the sun. So yes, in a way, our life is vain and empty, and that we will die. There's a day you will die, and it will come. There is no doubt to that. But having said that, while you are alive, rejoice in what he has given you. He has given you bread. He has given you wine or happy drinks, if they're Dr. Pepper or whatever it is. Do it with a joyful and happy and thankful heart, for he has accepted you. He made you. He knew you would be born at this time. He created you for a purpose, and he wants you to fulfill that purpose, and he wants you to do it with joy. It says, let your garments always be white. In other words, don't be so depressed about your life, the time that you have, that you don't even get around to doing the laundry, to taking care of yourself, to putting what he says oil on your head, or taking care of your hair, your makeup, your showering, your personal care, because you're so discouraged. It says, live joyfully with the wife you love. If I'm talking to you as a woman today, you are the wife that somebody loves. If you are so blessed to be that, then give that man joy. Give your family joy. And it happens when you put your whole heart into the work that you have been given by God to do with the time that he has given you. Let's go to Ecclesiastes 10:10, because this one is fascinating to me. It says, if the axe is dull, and one does not sharpen the edge, then he must use more strength. But wisdom brings success. So you've been given all this time and all these amazing things I'm telling you that God made your life for, and he wants to see you do great things with your life. He wants to see you be skillful with the time that he gave you. But for most of us, the axe is dull. We don't know how to use the gift that he gave us, and we're not skillful at it. We haven't taken the time to sharpen off the rough edges, and so everything we do in life is haphazard, and we just whack at our time like someone is flailing, and we have no purpose and intent with it. Like someone who is skillful with an axe, or think of someone who's taken a tree and they make like those bears, they carve out of it. And I'm not saying we should make graven images, but it's skill. It takes a lot of skill because they have sharpened their axe and they have practiced. And if you want to use the gift that he's given you with skill, you have to be wise. You have to have wisdom here, and you have to sharpen your axe. So today I'm going to give you some ideas on how to sharpen that axe, so that you don't have to use more strength, so that every day is not so difficult. If you want your days to be a little bit easier so you can breathe and have a chance to catch your breath and have a chance to have a little energy left over to love those that are around you, then let's be wise and not just start hacking, okay? Let's be wise. Let's go also over to verse 18. Chapter 10, verse 18, it says, because of laziness, the building decays, and through idleness of hands, the house leaks. Isn't that true? I mean, really, why do we have leaky houses? Sometimes it's because we're too busy, and frankly, that's going back to that first thing. We're hacking at life without any skillfulness. We have not skillfully cut off the pieces of wood to make a beautiful image out of our lives. I'm trying to run this metaphor too far. But here it says the other reason is also laziness. Sometimes we just are so lazy, as it says in the book of Proverbs, we're too tired to bring our hand to our mouth. We just don't care. We just don't have any motivation to do anything. And I hope that will not be true of you guys, that you won't have a leaky house because of laziness, okay? That the structure of your home will be intact, and that everything about it will be successful. But it takes hard work, and it also takes skillful work, not just not being lazy, but also sharpening the axe, and both of those are needed. Let's go back to Psalm 90 and see how much time the Father has given us, because this is an incredibly important thing to think about. Psalm 90 verse 10 says, the days of our lives are 70 years, and if by reason of strength, they are 80 years. Yet their boast is only labor and sorrow, for it is soon cut off and we fly away. Down in verse 12 he says, so teach us to number our days, that we may gain a heart of wisdom. Remember I said that if you want to sharpen the axe, you have to be wise? That's how you have success. How do we become wise with our time? We number the days. So this is a simple math problem that you can do, and I'm going to do it for you here with my own life. I am now 48 years old, and this is how many days I've been alive as of today that you are watching this video during our 2022 Homeschool Family Conference, okay? So as of this day, this is how many days I've been alive. So according to this verse, it says the days of our lives are 70 years. So how many days do I have left to get work done? You can see this number here. I'm going to multiply that out. And then let's subtract how many days are Sabbath days in which we are not to do work, although they are beautiful days and we can accomplish much for Him on those days in our resting. But let's just take the days that we can work. So I'm going to subtract how many days of Sabbath I have left until the day I turn 70. And these are how many days I have left. And that is incredibly sobering. I hope you'll do that for you too. I'm going to add here real quick up to 80 years so that you can see that if I'm exceptionally strong, this is how long I'm going to live. And if you've been around Homeschooling Torah for a while, you'll know that strength is actually not one of my best things. So one of my goals this year is to do more exercise. I've already been working on my diet. I've been losing some weight. I've been trying to get sleep at night, all of these things because I want to be strong and live to 80. In fact, I'll be honest, I've actually prayed and asked the Father to let me be 120 like Caleb or Moses. Whether He answers that request or not, I don't know. But it's up to me to also do my part and to be wise and to sharpen my axe and to try to be as healthy and responsible for what He's given me. It's a gift, right? So I need to take care of it. It's not just a matter of praying and asking for something and then being foolish, right? So I hope you'll number your days because that is what the Bible says will give you a heart of wisdom. It will help you sharpen your axe. To be sober and to go, you know what, I don't have all the time in the world. I better do what I'm supposed to do now because I'm almost done. So let's go down to verse 17 though. It says, let the beauty of Yehovah our God be upon us. Let the beauty of Yehovah our God be upon us and establish the work of our hands for us. Yes, establish the work of our hands. That's the prayer, right? We want our hands and the work of our children's hands to be established. So there are some things you can do to help you and your children number the days. And it's not just an exercise of counting them up of how much time you have left, but to daily remind yourself of how much time you have left. First of all, when your children are small, let's teach them to tell time. And I would recommend that you use a good old-fashioned English American clock, I guess you could say, because this doesn't go back to creation at all. Back then they would have used sundials and whatever else. They would have looked at the sun. But I would teach your children to count and use the clock. If you yourself are not very good at using an old-fashioned clock, I would advise you to become better at it. And I would not use a digital clock. It's very tempting to just look at the clock that's over the microwave or over the stove, but or the one that's on our phone or the one that's on the laptop or the one that's in the car. No, I'd get the old-fashioned clock that has hands, and so you've got your hour hand, your minute hand, and your second hand. So you are literally watching the time slip away. I just think it's so much more effective for teaching you time. Teach your children how to count by fives. You know, it's a fantastic way to learn their fives times tables because it goes all the way up to 60. So 5 times 12 is 60, right? But definitely use this on a daily basis. But having said that, I also want to recommend that you go outside with your children in the morning, as many mornings as possible, and say, hey, there's the sunrise, and you look at it. Did you know that looking at the sun with your eyes in the morning helps to set your circadian rhythms, and it helps keep you healthy? It's fantastic. Now, it's not just once. You have to do it consistently every day. And then sometimes here in Michigan, early in the morning in the summertime when that sun comes up in the 5 o'clock range, I don't do this. But I do try as often as possible to see the sunrise, or at least to go as soon as I wake up out to the east and at least get that light in my eyes. I'm not worshiping the sun because He's my creator, but I do want to look at the sun. Another thing you can do is to pay attention to sunset in the evening. And after sunset, start to turn down those lights in your house. Stop using the blue light, and if you have to use a blue light device, anything that's emitting blue light, such as a television or a computer or your phone, you can get those special blockers that turns it off. Dim those lights and get away from the sunshine's blue light and get towards the red lights that happen more at night. And definitely tone those lights down. turn off all those bright electric lights. Turn on the softer, I'm trying to think, incandescent, not that it's easy to find those, but if you can, turn those on, they're better for you. And just simply dim the lights at night. And except for a special occasion when you need it, try to make your nights peaceful and quiet. And to sit around, and that's the time to just share stories as a family and to talk about your day and just, have those great, rich conversations. Those help. Another thing you can do with whether small children or older children is pay attention to the weather. Pay attention to the cycles. One of the things we've noticed since we've been starting to keep Torah is that the weather is consistently the same every Sukkot. And that's funny because it varies whether it's in September or late October. Anywhere in there, that's like an 8-week variance, and yet the weather is always the same on our Creator's calendar. People will say everything from, oh, it's so hot this year, it must be global warming, if it's September and not Sukkot yet. And I'll be like, no, it's just not Sukkot time yet. Or, wow, the leaves are changing so early this year. It doesn't normally happen like this. And we're like, no, it's because it's almost Sukkot. That's why the leaves are changing. It always happens the same. Same thing in the spring. You'll notice that the first signs of life always happen the same time on His calendar. They aren't very well matched to our Gregorian calendar. So it's fantastic to keep like a year-long weather calendar with your children. And this is just exactly what it sounds like you did in kindergarten, have a calendar and every day mark the weather and maybe the temperature. The simple act of doing that is going to teach your children all kinds of great math facts, but you're also just regulating your life and starting to notice that it goes on His calendar, on His biblical calendars, with the bookends of Passover in the spring and Sukkot in the fall, with the rainy seasons coming in, or snow if you live in Michigan, coming in the winter months. So it's just fantastic, no matter where you live, to do that. Another thing is to pay attention to those moons. Now, I live in the uttermost part of the earth, known as Michigan, in the United States. And in the uttermost part of the earth, we are a long ways from the land that He gave to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I am not anywhere close to Jerusalem, Zion, the place that He placed His name forever, and the place that we go up for the feast to worship Him if we were doing it in a biblical way. Now, most of us are frankly not doing that. We cannot, for financial reasons or employment reasons or whatever, vaccination reasons, whatever, but we are missing the mark because we cannot go to the place where His name is placed for each of the 3 feasts. Having said that, we can find out because of the internet and, oh my goodness, so much technology that is available to us, almost like He's preparing to bring us back there, huh? Almost like He's stirring up our hearts. Kind of funny how that is. And He has made it available that we can go on to various websites and we can find out what the moon is doing in Jerusalem. So I try to talk to my kids about it a lot. I show them how the earth is oriented so that the moon is always seen about a day later in Jerusalem than it is here at the uttermost parts of the earth in Michigan. We get it sooner because it just the way that He created His universe, but we are not where He placed His name. So we see the moon here and I say, guys, I want you to know that's the beginning of a new month when you see that moon. Having said that, it has not happened yet in the place where He placed His name, so just know that when He brings us back to the land, that is where time is going to be determined. But I want you to be able to identify it, kids. That's what a new moon looks like. And my kids are fast because they've been doing it their whole lives. They can find that new moon so quick. We have a race every Yom Teruah. We have a party as our whole congregation, and we have a race to see who can see the new moon of the 7th month first, and whoever does gets a pretty cool prize. And it's almost always the kids because they have had the most practice. We adults are like looking around in the sky. We don't even know which direction west is. We're like, where's the moon? Hold on, get my app out. I gotta look on my app and figure out where west is. And the kids are like, there it is, and they won the prize. But I think that's incredibly valuable. My youngest son, he was born in a home that was keeping Torah, so he's been his entire life looking for the moon every month. Now in Michigan, I say that with a little caveat. We have a lot of cloudy days here, especially in the winter months, and so we don't always get the opportunity to see the moon here. There are many, many months of the year that we just cannot see it at all at night because it's so cloudy. So It's more in the summertime that we're able to, and then we live with a lot of trees around us. So sometimes we have to actually be intentional and take a walk and look at the moon. Somewhere where we're away from the trees and lights and such. The moon can be seen without, anyway. But I do think that that's an important thing. Now, there are a lot of really cool resources. I've put some in your handout so you can find like stickers and calendars. And so calendars are incredibly important. I think every home should have calendars and every home should have clocks, and lots of them, okay? Just pay attention to these things and help your children. When the Bible says on the 15th day of the month, this is when you are to have Sukkot, it's easy to start getting in the habit year round, not just that month, but every single month, counting, teaching us to number our days so that we may have a heart of wisdom. Number your days all the time. You know, from Passover to Shavuot, counting the 50 days. Always paying attention. What time is it on the Father's clock? Okay, let's talk about managing your time now that you know what day it is. All right? How do we become like that man who gets up for his labor in the morning and then comes back to his home at night to rest? We have labor too. It says in, I'm going to read 1 Timothy 5, 9 through 14. And I want to see what women are supposed to be doing during the day. This is talking about widows who needed to be cared for by their local congregations, and it gives you an idea of what they expect a godly widow, someone who is just known to be amazing and righteous and well-deserving of financial help from their local congregation. And so it gives a list of character qualities that this woman should have exhibited during her life. And I want you to remember, what's our quote? How we live our days is how we live our lives. So how you are living your days right now, someday you may be that widow who needs help, and people are going to look back at how you acted in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s to say, yep, she's deserving. So pay attention to this list. 1 Timothy 5:9 says, do not let a widow under 60 years old, they're counting the days, be taken into the number of those who are being cared for, and not unless she has been the wife of one man, well reported for good works, if she has brought up children, if she has lodged strangers, if she has washed the saints' feet, if she has relieved the afflicted, if she has diligently followed every good work. Talk about a checklist of what you need to do with your life. But verse 11, refuse the younger widows, and then it goes on to why. Well, I'll say it. For when they have begun to grow wanton against Messiah, they desire to marry, having condemnation because they've cast off their first faith. And besides, they learn to be idle. Remember, idleness, the leaky roof? They are wandering instead from house to house, and not only idle, but also gossips and busybodies. They are not watching their time, and they are saying things which they ought not, and that those words are damaging people. Therefore, I desire that the younger marry, bear children, manage the house, give no opportunity to the adversary to speak reproachfully. So what are we supposed to be doing with our time? Getting married, bearing children, managing our house, and not going about gossiping from house to house with idleness. We're supposed to be really busy. It says in Titus Chapter 2 that older women are supposed to teach the younger women, but it says the older women are to be reverent in behavior, not slanderers, not given to much wine. And see, they're not lazy. Teachers of good things, that they admonish the young women to love their husbands, to love their children, to be discreet, chaste, homemakers, good, obedient to their own husbands, that the word of God may not be blasphemed. See, they say exactly the same thing. I love that word homemakers there, because in the Greek, it's actually a compound word where they've smashed two words together, and the two words mean a keeper or a guard of a house. So when it says a homemaker, we get an idea of what you're supposed to do. And I'm not saying that women can only cook and only clean and only bear children. Obviously, we are to bear children if the Father gives us that ability. But the word is to guard that house, which opens up a whole world of possibilities. And of course, if you go to the Proverbs 31 woman, she is famous, and she does many things that bless her home, even financially as an entrepreneur. But above all, no matter what she is doing, she is guarding her own house, and she is using her time faithfully, she is not idle. This is so important for us to realize. So here are some challenges that really mess us up, okay? I got these challenges. I'm not creative enough to have come up with them on my own, but Amy Lynn Andrews from tellyourtime.com, I want to give her credit that I thought these were fantastic. Number one challenge to doing this and to counting our time and keeping track of it well. She says we don't like to wait. In other words, we're easily distracted. We just don't like to wait for the next thing. For instance, I am famous, I'm sorry to say, for burning dinner. And it's a lot of the times because while I'm waiting 3 minutes for something to have to brown on one side, I think, oh, I'll go run over to my computer, which is in the next room, and I'm going to do this and this and this. And I can be back in 3 minutes. And then because I'm not patient, I'm not willing to be content, you could say, with what I'm at and where I'm at in my life. That, you know what, I might just have to stand here and let this brown on one side and then flip it, and I don't have to go running off to do more things. The second reason is we don't like to work. We're easily bored by work. Work is work. In fact, it is what the Father made us to do. And if you go back to Genesis 1 and Genesis 2, you'll see that work defined. And work, when we do it, blesses us. It gives us contentment and joy. You're going to have to try it to know that what I'm saying is true. Thirdly, we try to squeeze in too many activities. And like I just told you, that is definitely my number one problem. I am trying to do more with the days that He has given me than I probably have the strength to do. So one of those three problems might be your problem. If you don't have enough time or energy or know-how to get everything done, there are 4 things you can do, okay, when you don't have time. And these are legitimate, but you'll see that only one of them is actually good. So I don't have enough hours in the day to get everything done. I can, number one, I can steal it. In other words, I can, as my mom likes to say, rob from Peter to pay Paul. So instead of trying to, if I can't get everything done, I might just rob it from my sleep, or just skip lunch, or try to like cram it all in today and think that I'll catch up with everything tomorrow. So we try to steal time. You can't steal time. It doesn't work. The sun is continuing to move across the sky, and all I've done is just hurt myself. Number 2, we can try to be more efficient. So let's just say I'm going to, instead of washing my dishes by hand, I could purchase a dishwasher. I don't have a spot in my kitchen for a dishwasher, so we actually do have to wash our dishes by hand. But this is the same idea as people that invented a vacuum cleaner. They invented washers and dryers. We invented cars. And we've invented a lot of things in the last 100 years. And they have helped us be more efficient, but has it changed the amount of time? The sun is continuing to move across the sky in exactly the same speed. So really all we've done is just added more stuff. And we aren't like sitting around eating bonbons all day, right? Number 3, we could delegate. We could get help. I don't think that's a bad one necessarily if you have someone to delegate to. If your children are old enough to delegate things to, and this is why this session is called Teaching Time Management, you can say, let's all get on board. Sabbath is coming. We've got this work to do and that work to do. Let's all do it together. And I know as moms, a lot of us are guilty of feeling that we must do it all ourselves. Doesn't the Bible say I'm supposed to be a homemaker? No, that's why I brought that Greek out. It says we're to guard the home. We are okay with delegating to our children. You don't have to do it all yourself, Mom. And in fact, you might need to hire a mom's helper or a babysitter or someone to come in and do this job or that job to help you during certain seasons of your life, specifically when you're having a baby or you've been sick or you have an elderly parent to take care of. It's perfectly okay to delegate. Of course, there is a limit to how much you can delegate, because you are the manager of your house. And so if you've delegated out so much that you can't even manage all of those different people and how they're doing it, and you're not doing it up to good standards, then you've delegated too much. So again, just because you delegate, and by the way, about delegating, you have to teach someone else to do it. So that takes time too. Sometimes it's pretty slow at first. So remember that. But as we delegate, the sun is continuing to move across the sky in exactly the same speed as it was before. So then the fourth one is if you don't have enough time, you can simply eliminate things from the list of things you have to do. And sometimes that is a practical response. And that's where we have to have priorities, and we have to know, what does the Father want us to do, and what does our husband want us to do, and what do our children need us to do, and is there someone in our, like that widow woman who took care of strangers and washed the saints' feet. Obviously, when she was washing someone's feet, because that implies maybe they were sick or had been traveling and they had sore feet and she's caring for them, there were other jobs that she was neglecting at that moment. Do you see what I'm saying? She can only be in one place at a time, unless she's sometimes delegating, but you have to choose. Because as the sun moves across the sky, you can literally only do one thing at a time. I don't care what we say about multitasking. You're literally switching is what you're actually doing. You're not doing two things at once. You're switching. And sometimes that leaves us feeling frazzled. So when we make one choice, let's say you make a choice to spend 3 hours researching something for your son who has a need in school. At that same time, you probably have made a decision not to get laundry done that afternoon or to start dinner. So that's the fun of being a homemaker, is that sometimes we do have to say no to one thing and yes to another. But as a general rule, I want to talk to you about habits. Habits make up about 40% of what we do in a day. And a habit is something that we just do on autopilot without thinking about it. It's just a standard thing. For instance, my mom has a habit every morning when she goes into the bathroom to brush her teeth and take her shower and all of those things, she grabs a baby wipe and she wipes down the bathroom. And she's been doing it for so many years. Her bathroom always looks immaculate. But frankly, it's a habit, and I have a feeling she doesn't have to think too much about that. She just grabs a baby wipe and starts to clean. So it has become second nature. But even before that, brushing her teeth. Do you really think that much about it? Is it something you stress about? Maybe if you'd never brushed your teeth before, you might have to Google it and find out how to do it. But really, those are things that we know because they've been trained into us by our parents. So teaching time management, the best way to do this is to ingrain habits so that life becomes on autopilot and we don't have to expend any energy. It just is the thing we do. And while we're doing it, we could be praying, we could be on the phone with somebody. Like seriously, I can wipe down a bathroom with a baby wipe and be on the phone with someone. So in a way, that's multitasking. I have put those things that have to be done on a cyclical basis on habit mode. So there's a lot of things that you do every single day, or should do, even if you aren't getting them done right now. Like you can think of them: cleaning, cooking, sleeping, homeschooling, spending time with your husband. These are cyclical things that happen over and over and over again. And in a way, you can put them on autopilot so that you have energy left for the different things that arise each day that are going to surprise you. So I really want you to try to pay attention this week to the things that you have to do over and over. And do you have a routine to it, a procedure, so that it happens on autopilot? So for instance, in another video, I talked to you about having your kids always sit in the same seat every day. Always putting their pens in a certain pouch, always putting their book bag next to their chair, and always doing their subjects in the same order. See how many things there can be automated and put on habit mode so that you don't have to give any thought to it. And now the first couple days that you do it, no one's going to be on habit mode. It's all going to feel difficult. And on those days, you need to remove all other distractions. You need to turn off your phone, put it on Do Not Disturb, tell people that you're busy that day and you cannot do anything else. So start school at a time when you can devote time only to setting up habits. And when you've set up those habits, and it takes a few days, maybe even a few weeks if you're really rusty, then now you're on autopilot. Your brain isn't having to think about those things anymore. Now you can start adding in other things: ministry, friends, talking to this or that. And you'll know when you get to the tipping point when your habits fall apart that you've gone too far. Does that make sense? It really is a fairly helpful thing to think about. So here's how I do it. I list all the things that I do in my life. And if you'll note, when I said that, I mean the cyclical things. So I do this pretty much once a year. Sometimes more if things are really in upheaval that year, and some years are like that. But I just sit down with my phone or a piece of paper and I make a massive list of everything I do in a week, in a month, in a year, I mean, birthday parties, all the way down to brushing my teeth. I literally write everything down. And I try not to miss anything, but I would advise you to give this several days, even a week, because you'll forget lots of things. For instance, I was making a list recently of everything, and I completely forgot that once a week I take all my supplements and I put them in 7 little bottles. And that way, only once a week do I have to remember all the supplements I take. The rest of the time, I wake up in the morning, I open the bottle, I pour it in my hand to take my supplements. No thought required. It's totally on habit mode. And I don't forget to take them either. It really helps. Having said that, when I was making my list of all the things I do, I forgot to write that down, because it does take 10 minutes or so to get all the pill bottles, and I have them in one box, so they're all handy and ready to go, and I keep it in my basement. And I have to bring it upstairs, I have to put it on the table, I have to take the pill bottles and take the lids off all 7, and I have to go through all of them, and I even have them in order in the box. And I take a marker, and if I have to take more than one of a pill, like 2 calciums or whatever, I write a 2 on the top, so that it's on habit mode. It's automatic. I just go in order through the box. I take the pills out, and I can talk to my daughter about her life and hear all of her hopes and dreams and have a fantastic conversation while I'm doing that, but I still need to have that written on my list, okay? So make a list of all that you do. Then before you get to official, I want you to schedule a date night with your husband, okay? This is homework. You got to do this. I expect to hear like hundreds of you are having dates next week, okay? Or maybe the week after. And I want you to schedule a night, and I want you to go to him, and I want you to hand him a list and show him all of the things you do in your life. And I want you to get his input. He is the boss of the house, right? As Ephesians 5 said, you are to submit to him in everything. So if you don't run your list by him, you're going to come into an argument, I predict, down the road. So even though you may not want to do this, I strongly recommend that you show him your list and have a peaceful, happy date night, eating a yummy steak somewhere, and giving kisses here and there, and make it a very fun night. Not an argument night. Take what he says, and if you don't agree with it, just swallow and continue the conversation and come back to that later. You can revisit it after you've had time to pray about it and come up with a solution. And maybe the solution is to submit and do what he said, probably. And anyway, I want you to make it a great night, and I do advise that you do that. And here's the next thing. Now you've talked to your husband and you've gotten all of his ideas. He's probably given you input about even when you could do some of those things and the procedures. So note that. And then I want you to take sticky notes like this. And these sticky notes are the small ones. And so I want each one of these to stand for 30 minutes of time. And you might want to get the color-coded ones, because some of them, your children might be doing different activities than you are at one point. And so you might have to have a different color for each person in your family. And so let's say you're pink and you write all of the activities that you listed on that paper. But this time I want you to think about how long it takes you to do them. And I want you to be reasonable. I don't want you to be too optimistic here. I want you to really be realistic. I want you to put 30 minutes is every sticky note. So if an activity is going to take you 2 hours, then it's going to need 4 sticky notes. Does that make sense? And then I want you to start to rearrange them. You might want to take some different sticky notes and put times. Say 6 o'clock, 6:30, 7, 7:30, and each sticky note down the side, and maybe put them on a wall somewhere, or the front of the refrigerator, or a door. Doors work great for this. And then at the top, say this is Dad, and he might need to make his own sticky notes. That's entirely up to you guys. But definitely have a mom's column, and then down there start to rearrange your sticky notes so that it fits, okay? If there are activities that happen only once a week, then you can kind of layer them on top of each other so that when you get to the 4 o'clock, it might be different on Tuesday than it is on Thursday. And then you're going to need a column for each of your children, and you're going to fill in when they're going to do this. Now, this is what I call my ideal week. It does not mean that it's always going to happen like this, because you cannot account for emergencies and things that there was no way you could predict. But this should be the general track that you run on. This should be the habits. These are the things that you're wanting to put on autopilot. If we have an average number of 40%, I'm working for more than that. I really want a huge amount of my day to be run by habits. Then I want you to try to live with it for a week. okay? Like actually try to live under that schedule. Remembering that as you adjust to new habits, things take longer. So, but just basically get an idea of this is totally not going to work. We're going to have to move those sticky notes around, or yeah, that's pretty close. You'll find that your meal times are really important as anchors, that you need to have those at consistent times and work and to do everything in your power to hit those. But maybe you're not allowing enough time to make supper. Maybe it takes longer than 30 minutes and you need to have 2 or even 3. We have to have 3 sticky notes for just prepping for supper in our time, because we have 9 of us and often company that comes over in the evening, and we don't have a dishwasher, and that's just prepping supper, then eating it, then cleaning it up. So it's a huge hunk of our day. If you have a smaller family or more help, it might be shorter. Anyway, then I want you to copy it down onto a piece of paper or onto an Excel file, and I want you to post that somewhere, and now it's time to actually put those habits into practice and live with it, and to do it, and to be self-disciplined. I have noticed over the years of doing this exact routine that about every 3 months, life changes enough that I actually have to take my Excel file or my piece of paper that I've written the schedule on and adjust a few things. So that's just life. I just do it every 3 months. We just make adjustments. But overall, the general plan really works, and it tends to stay that way for years. I mean, it's kind of crazy. Almost like the world is on a schedule or something, like the world he made. It's cool. Some things to keep in mind. Don't forget, the sun goes down, a new day is starting, to have a good bedtime routine for your children. Children need to go to bed. Different ages, your children need more sleep than at other ages. And teenagers, I think they need a lot. And you know what, Mom? You need sleep too. So don't forget to allow time in your schedule for plenty of sleep. If that's going to take a lot of sticky notes, that's okay, because sleep is important. Make sure that you're getting enough sleep. Bedtime routine though. So before you put your child to bed, and to bed meaning in their own bed with lights out, and they can get some sleep without distractions from all the other activity in the family. I don't recommend keeping your children up till midnight, okay? Put them to bed at night. They need it. They really, really do. But having said that, before you go to bed, have a routine about how you put them to bed. Always doing things in the same order, whether this is we brush our teeth, we use the bathroom, we change into our pajamas, we make sure that we've gotten a drink or a snack, we read a Bible story together or another kind of book together, we pray together, we have a little discussion about how our days went, and that all takes time. Make sure you have a bedtime routine, and as your children become teenagers, it's going to look different than that, but you do need a bedtime routine. I do recommend it. That's a great time of day to talk to your kids and hear about their lives, hear what's going on inside their mind, and I feel like it's just a window into their soul that you won't get at any other time. Make sure that you plan meal times. So breakfast, lunch, and supper. Breakfast and lunch can be light, but don't graze your refrigerator all day. Have set times for meals and sit together at the table and talk to each other and participate. Now, we don't, as a family, always sit together for lunch. And breakfast, we have different ages going to work at different times, so we're not all together for that as well. But for those of us that are in the home, we like to at least say good morning to each other. But supper is super important. If you're home at that time, if your schedule's anything like a traditional family, you're going to want to have supper together so that you can hear from each other how the day is going. Sometimes after supper, I like to go out and sit on the front porch with my kids, my older ones, and really hear about their life. Or we paint our nails together, or like I said, the night that I do my pill bottles, we can talk together then. So make sure you have those times, because eating, remember it said in Ecclesiastes about how he's given us food, and we should be enjoying it and rejoicing in it. That means it implies that we're together as a family, and it's a very peaceful time of day. Of course, one of the tricks for homeschooling and planning your time is prepping for all that food. And if you can delegate to your children, or your husband and wife can share some of the responsibility, that's great. And if not, then Mom, you have to be realistic about the time it takes to prep good, healthy food. Making your food from scratch takes time. So here's my little trick. When I'm having supper, I'm thinking ahead to what needs to be defrosted for the next supper. But I'm also thinking ahead to what needs to be done for breakfast. And at breakfast, I'm thinking ahead, I'm in the kitchen, we're washing up the dishes from breakfast. What could I get prepped right now for supper? And at lunchtime, is there anything that I need to do like otherwise? At lunchtime is my time to check the cheese that we might be making. If we're making some sauerkraut or we're doing sourdough or kombucha, that's the time to check our starters. So it's time to water my house plants, things, take care of the animals. So that's a kind of a lunchtime thing for me. That's how it works in my house. It doesn't much matter. You can do it however works for you, but you need to think through all of these things because those are keys to having meals on the table, and they can become habits. Like checking your sourdough starter should become a habit. It shouldn't take, once you know how to do it, that's the hard part. Once you know how to do it, it can become a habit, and you don't have to put any energy into it. Of course, you need some rest times in the afternoon. Your children need naps. If you have older children, like 5 and up, they might not need a nap, but they probably need some alone time. Mom, have you taken any rest today? Have you put your feet up? If you're nursing, are you getting enough water? Are you getting enough nutrition? Are you getting 100 grams of protein a day for pregnant? All of these things are incredibly important, and they have to be scheduled or you won't get it done. Not only scheduled, but you actually have to go and remember to buy the food at the store and get it in the house so that you can eat it. So that's a really important thing. And of course, you need to schedule time for work, school. Little children need playtime. All of this has to be scheduled. One of the things that I think is important is having the discipline of rising with your alarm in the morning. It says in Proverbs 31 that she rises while it is yet dark. I'm not saying that that is a rule, but it is interesting that she's up in the morning. She's definitely up and at 'em. She's not laying in bed all day, and it depends. You might have a chronic disease that means that you aren't going to get up at the same time as someone else, or your husband's work schedule is different. So don't compare yourself to me or anyone else, but the discipline of having the same time that you get up every day, unless it's Sabbath, should absolutely be there. Whatever time you pick, you should be getting up at the same time, and when your alarm goes off, you have to say, you know what? Time to get up. I'm going to do it. I'm speaking of alarms. Going to have a train. Okay, my train is gone. Might be another one. Those trains are on a schedule too, so we'll see in a second. But as we think about our routines every day and setting an alarm and getting up with it in the morning, sometimes honestly I use alarms for other things during the day too. Like an alarm, honestly, I have an alarm that reminds me to eat because sometimes I get very busy and I forget. An alarm to remind me to tell the little ones that it's time to start getting going on their bedtime routine, as otherwise I forget. An alarm that reminds me to have my prayer time. I'm not kidding, okay? Am I less spiritual because I had to set an alarm? Well, I hope you won't feel that way. I hope you'll just remember that these alarms are helping us set those habits that keep us running. And sometimes when we have too much on our plate, our brains can't remember everything. And so the alarm can kind of jolt that in. But of course, you have to be disciplined to listen to the alarm and to do what it says when it turns on, okay? Same thing within the morning. When you hear that alarm, there is no arguing with it. You have to get up. I wanted to say one more thing about sleep and having a consistent time that you get up and a consistent time that you go to bed. Last year, I was pretty sick with various kidney stones and stuff that I had. And I was a little frustrated because a lot of it was maybe brought on by me being too busy. And so what I did is I bought myself a watch. It's called a Whoop watch, and I'll put a link down below the video in case you're interested. But this Whoop watch is cool because it tracks my circadian rhythms and even my weekly and monthly rhythms. And over time, as I've had this thing, and I got it last winter, I've been able to watch and say, you know what, I can tell that when I go to bed at the same time every day and get up at the same time every day, I feel better. And this other thing that's so fascinating, it even asks you things like, did you see the sunrise? Did you see the sunset? Amazing. Like, scientists are actually validating with all kinds of data everything that the Bible tells us back in Genesis 1. So try to be consistent about those things. And if you need alarms to tell you to go to bed and alarms to tell you to get up, then good. It's fine, okay? But then you can use the sun and the moon and the stars to help you orient yourself as to where you're at in time. I wanted to also mention another little routine that I have. When I go in my bedroom in the morning and I make my bed, and what I do, here's exactly what I do. I walk in, I'm in my jammies at that point, I've been in them for a little while, and now I go in my room and I get dressed in the clothes I'm going to wear that day, and I put on my jewelry, and then I make my bed. Okay, when that is done, I walk over to the top of my dresser and I grab my tzitzit that I'm gonna go, I get some that match the outfit I'm wearing that day, and as I put them on and I tie them to each of their spots, I say the Lord's Prayer, which, as we were talking about on the first day of our conference, it contains that famous phrase, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And that's one of the reasons I've been thinking about it so much this year, is because I have that habit and routine of always doing it at that time. And that's my prayer for the day. And I have another prayer time as well. That's just a quick one that I do as I tie those on. And then I walk out of my room, and with it I take, any like little bits of garbage or anything that I need to go put away. I walk through the house and I'm picking up stuff and putting them in their spot. I arrange the pillows on the couch so everything looks neat and tidy. I walk into the kitchen, I feed the dog. It's just, I have a routine. I always go about things in the same way, including dedicating my day to Yehovah and praying and asking for His will to be done that day on earth as it is in heaven. To be very cognizant of the fact that my home is a reflection of His kingdom. So you can do those things in your time, is what I'm trying to say. Again, how we live our days is how we live our lives. So you may think these things are silly and not necessarily important, but all of those little tiny habits build up to become a life. And that life is so important. Now, there are a lot of things that we should live our life for. But I want to bring, as we conclude, I want to bring a couple verses to your mind. First, Ecclesiastes Chapter 1. This one I saw the last time I read through Ecclesiastes, and I had never noticed it before. And it really hit me. So Ecclesiastes 1, verses 9 through 11. It says, that which has been is what will be. That which is done is what will be done. Talk about habits. And there is nothing new under the sun. Is there anything of which it may be said, see, this is new. It has already been in ancient times before us. There is no remembrance of the former things, nor will there be any remembrance of the things that are to come by those who will come after. And you know what hit me? I've spent a lot of my life making curriculum for Homeschooling Torah. And for all the kids, my grandkids, I was imagining it living on forever. But according to these verses, someday those who come after us will not even remember what we've done. And shortly after I read that, we visited an antique shop. And in the antique shop, there was this really cool shelf of books. And down on the bottom shelf of this whole bookcase were all these school books. There were grammar books and math books. There were good citizenship. And honestly, they were fantastic. They were written in the 1800s. And yes, I may have bought a couple of them. And here's the thing that hit me, because I had read this verse. I don't know these authors, and they spent so much time developing that curriculum, and it was fantastic. So why in the world am I writing Homeschooling Torah when there's already fantastic curriculum out there? Because there is no remembrance of the things that came before. In other words, I started to say, then why am I doing it? Why am I spending so much time on something that's going to be forgotten? No one's going to remember my work. I could make a garden this year, and no one someday is even going to remember that I did it. My great-grandmother, who lived just down the road from us, about 15 minutes, she probably had gardens. I have no idea what she planted. I don't know how much yield she got, how many things she canned up some August, and it was hot and she was sweating. And I don't know about it. And I'm only her great-granddaughter. And that just messes with my head. So what is the purpose of it all? Why are we doing it if no one's going to even remember it? Why am I working so hard when all of it's going to be forgotten? And it is, because the Bible is true. Let me say another thing that will be forgotten: my money, all of my possessions, my house. I was somewhere this week, and I was driving into a parking lot, and I saw over on the edge a rectangle of a building that used to be there. I don't know what that building was. I'm imagining it did cost money. Whoever built it invested heavily into that, time and money, and yet it is just barely there. And I have no idea where that money went, why it was spent, or why it's not there anymore. But everything that you see, my house that's over here, my shed, all of the things that my husband is building, someday will be gone, and no one will remember them. And everything that we've worked so hard on in our lives will be gone and forgotten. So what does remain? That's a really important question, because it tells us where to invest our time. And I'm not saying it's bad to invest it in curriculum, because this next one tells me what will endure, and that is my children. My children will grow up, and Abba willing, they'll have children, and then they'll grow up and they'll have children. And you know, it says that to a third and fourth generation, he punishes those that hate him, but to those who love him, he rewards them to 1,000 generations. That's something, in other words, forever. That is something that endures. We've not even had 1,000 generations since creation. Just wrap your head around that. That's forever. Your children, and pouring truth into them and teaching them about Torah and teaching them about Yeshua and his love, teaching them about the kingdom and how to behave properly, that endures forever. Forever. You will never lose the amount of time you invest into your children and to your home. You will never lose the amount of time you invest into any other people as well. So what lasts forever? People. People last forever. So that's where you should prioritize your time. The kingdom of heaven will last forever. So how you live in preparation for it matters. So what is this life for? We're not in the kingdom. Well, Yeshua told a parable about giving talents to his servants. One he gave 5, and one he gave 2, and one he gave 1. And this is in Matthew chapter 25. And at the end, he called all of those servants back to him, and he asked them what they did with them. And they gave an account to him. And they explained, this is what I did. This is how I invested that talent. And look at the return it had. And he said, well done, good and faithful servant. I delivered to you 5 talents or 2 talents, and you've gained even more, two more. You've doubled it. Fantastic return. You've been faithful over a few things. I will make you ruler over many things, and enter into the joy of your Lord. And I want someday for the master to come back and say, not that my curriculum is going to last forever, because it's not. There's going to be a new one written someday for that generation in that time period. And someone's going to pour their life into it and invest so much into it. But that's not why I'm doing it. I'm doing it so that someday the master will come back and he'll take a look at the curriculum and he'll go, hopefully, well done, good and faithful servant. Oh my goodness, that's what I want. I want to hear that from him. I want him to say, I'm pleased with you. This life is not what matters. This life is going to end. I have only a certain number of days, and when those days are gone, I'll be gone. There'll be no more Aunt Elliot, and there'll be no more Homeschooling Torah. Only the investment that I've made into children will last, so that's incredibly important. And into the lives of others, of course, as I share the gospel with them. That will last. But the other thing about this life is that it's a test. He's delivered some talents to me, and someday he's going to make me give an account. We were talking earlier in this week about the importance of testing, and the testing process itself teaches me so much. I'm learning every day because of this test that I'm in. This life, this 70 or 80 years is my test. But I want to have at least double the return from everything that he's given me. Has he given me this many days? Then I want a double return on them. Has he given me this much energy and strength? Whatever that is, and at certain times in my life it hasn't been very much, but I want to return back to him double for what he's given me. And has he given me children? Then I want to return them back to him as amazing children that are everything he's given me and so much more. So I don't want to waste a second. I want everything about my life to count. I want to get us on a schedule. I want to pay attention to the time. I want to note the way that he works and his cycles of time, so that everything counts, so that I'm doing it the right way. I used to rest on Sunday and now I'm resting on Saturday. Why? Because I want everything about my life to match what His Word says. I want it to be accurate, and I want to acknowledge that He's the Creator and He knows what's best. And it's a test. I don't want to fail. I don't want to get everything right, but oops, missed that one. Should have been on Saturday. On Saturday, that's the right day. I want to be doing it correctly. I want to be doing Bible things in Bible ways so that when He comes back, He says, "Well done, good and faithful servant. You've been faithful over a few things, and I'm going to make you now have the ability to have mastery over even more, because there's a kingdom coming, guys." Enter into the joy of your Lord. There could not be any more joy than that, I promise you. So, this message has been for you, Mom, and this message is for you and your kids, because you have to teach it to them. They endure, and someday you'll be gone. My grandma is not around anymore. My mom is 80. The days that I have with her are certainly numbered. And I'm, as you know, getting up there. So the days that I have with my children are numbered. So teach us, Father, to number our days, that we may have a heart of wisdom. Amen.